Episode number 4. You've made it this far. I appreciate it. Welcome back to System Prompt episode number 4, Agentic Coding. I'm your host, Val.
And I'm Peter. And this is going to be a fun one today because, we're going to deliver this one kind of strong to start this one off. You aren't seriously delivering software if you are not using these tools, right? We're not talking about AI hype. We're talking about how software is actually getting built today, right now. What is agentic coding, right? What is it? People need a definition. What does that mean? It means that you're taking these agents that's able to take a request. Say you're building a website. Build me a website, right? The agent takes this request, decomposes it to everything that it would need, and then builds you a website, right? Now, it's a little bit more nuanced than just that, right? It's a little bit more nuanced. You have to understand what language you're using. You're going to be using JavaScript. You're going to be using React. You could, if you want to, you can be using Ruby. If I'm gonna toss Val a layup here. If you can use WordPress.
You can use WordPress. You can. You can. PHP is right up there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But these are systems that plan, execute, and iterate, right? That's what agentic coding is.
And it's not too much different than if you're talking to ChatGPT through a text prompt. You feed it text, it feeds you back text, and it gives you the best probable output on whatever text you give it. Agentic software development is the same way. You give it a prompt and it says, hey, I think this is the best code that I should compile to solve or to answer your question. Plain and simple.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
not so plain and simple.
Yeah, right. This isn't a tool upgrade. This is a workflow replacement, right? Because we're starting to heavily lean away from boilerplating syntax ourselves. And what does that mean? It means writing out the syntax ourselves, right? We're starting to lean away from that. Syntax is becoming commoditized through agentic coding. You're able to get thousands and thousands of lines of code much faster than you can write them, right? This circles back to our original point. You cannot be building software at the speed of yesterday anymore with the advent of agentic coding. I mean, again, you had NVIDIA CEO. The expectation is that you're going to be using roughly half your salary on tokens. Roughly half your salary. You're scrolling through LinkedIn. The amount of tokens you're spending now is some sort of badge of honor.
Yeah, I mean, they got me. I'm soon to post 500,000 lines developed using my IDE. And really what that means is that this is how much money I gave Windsurf to build all this software.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, can you sit there and write code by hand? Yes, you absolutely can. Shout out to those masochists who are sitting there and still doing that. But today, right now, the expectation is that you're going to be delivering a lot faster, right? What took you 2 months? What took you 2 months yesterday is now taking you to focus like 3 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I think what you're really talking about is the speed is necessary because I think the problems that we're trying to solve now are shifting a little bit. It's not from building something super duper pretty on the code side. It's to building a pretty product that solves a problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you have these people that are still arguing syntax. People are still critiquing syntax, right? This is a world that rewards execution. They want execution. The only ones who are measuring syntax are engineers. End users are not measuring syntax. They are not looking at syntax, right? They're critiquing the kitchen. The customer only cares about the food.
Yeah.
They only care about the
And
food.
funny enough, there are some engineers who probably don't care, and some of them work at Claude Code. I mean, work at Anthropic,
Yeah.
and they develop Claude Code, a great product that I don't know if every senior engineer deep in the game would say this was the most beautifully written code I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, from what I'm seeing now, they're saying that it's absolute crap written. It's written. They never push code this way. It's sloppy. It's messy. All right. Well, you know what? This highlights the highlights the point, right? It works, and they're not going to stop using it. They're not going to stop using it. They're using it while they're critiquing it. It's insane.
There's a little bit of irony to it. You're using it to build beautiful code, but in and of itself, it's not beautiful code. So then what's important now?
Execution.
Product. It's the execution, brother. It's the product, man. Can you go and do that? And I think what you're talking about is why there is a difference in the tools that you use, because there are some tools that build software that are great for MVPs. They're great for minimum viable products, something to get out there so you can see and touch your hands on. But because the industry is moving so fast, that is great for an MVP. But if we're talking about building production-ready software, we got to go deeper into the bag of tools that we use, because you need a lot more to make sure all the ground is covered before you put that software into somebody's hands. And I love some of these platforms like Lovable. I think the head of growth marketing, I don't want to butcher her name, but I believe it's Elena Verna. She's awesome. Their marketing plan is phenomenal. They got it locked down. But is that the product that you want to use to build enterprise level production ready software?
It's definitely pretty. It starts with a P, right? It's definitely pretty.
It is. It's beautiful, man. The designers won in that one. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm going to use a little bit of levity here. I'm generally more of like a back end type guy, right? I generally focus more on back end. So when you get to like UX UI, I'm just like da-da-da-da. So when I'm looking at something like Lovable, and I'm like, oh my god, I got something that can finally help me with some front end work. But then you look at the back end, and you're like, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to touch that. I don't want any part of that. Bring me back Claude. Let's go. Bring me back Claude. Let's go. But yeah, no, you're right. The Lovables, the V1s, Replit to some degree, although Replit does do a little bit more in the back end than some of these other ones. What else is there? You got Bolt.new. I mean, there's a ton of these vibe coded items, right? And then you have the separation, because then you have like Cursor, Claude Code, Windsurf. You have Kilo Code, Codex, right? Is Codex? Would you put Codex in the same conversation with some of these other IDEs? I don't know that I would.
I don't know if I would, man. Now, Codex is good at certain parts of what I would use within my IDE. So, for instance, I would probably use like a OpenAI, like a GPT model to do like code review, to run maybe testing. But outside of that, it seems like, and I may get fried for it, but it seems like it leans more towards the vibey kind of coding, as opposed to me trying to understand file structure and really kind of, because there is a middle ground. Yeah, we don't need to make super beautiful code, but we don't, we don't need to go all the way to the other extreme. And I think where we're living now, or where the new normal is this kind of middle ground. And I think if I were to put Codex on a pendulum, I think it leans more towards the Lovable as opposed to, let's say, the VS Code. Although you would use it in VS Code, but yeah. What do you think?
I'm gonna lean more towards vibey. Like everyone, we're gonna use OpenClaw as an example, right? We're gonna use OpenClaw as an example. I think that's a good one. The gentleman who shares my same name, Peter. I forgot what his last name, Steinberger, something to that effect. He was on YouTube touting, I didn't review a single piece of code. I vibed the whole thing from top to bottom. And I think the most important part of that, right, is that you had the CEO of NVIDIA, the biggest company, one of the biggest companies in the world, saying that this is one of the most influential pieces of software ever made, completely on vibes. Not a single code review was done. And think about that for a second, right? So when you're thinking about what it is that we're referring to, when you're talking about that, you're not going to be taken seriously building software if you're not using these tools. Look at what was said about something that was built solely using these tools with literally almost zero oversight. People are going to come, well, he's a software developer. He's a software developer. Show me another software developer that's not doing code review and that's doing it in completely vibes. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you make all strong points, and this is the shift, and it's a little jarring, man. I guess if you're in the space for years and years and years, and then in maybe a 2 or 3 year span, everything completely changes and upends, and you didn't even have a chance to sink your teeth into what's even happening, it could feel a little jarring because it almost feels like magic. This thing shouldn't be producing what it's producing, and then we're using it. So how does that work? And you start to ask all the questions, but I think the main questions that should be asked is this a good product? Did it fail when I used it? Because we know, like, Claude code I mean, that leak really it let us see what's behind the curtains. And the question you got to ask is, how many times has Claude code failed if you're a user of it? How many times has it failed using it? How many times has it just completely conked out? How many times has it done weird and wonky things that you would expect of something that's written poorly?
I mean, as an advent user of Claude Code, and you know that I live and die by Claude Code right now, and you know that, and that's why you're taking that shot at me. I don't appreciate it, Val. I'm just going to say that first.
Yeah, we got to put the little verses right between us.
Look, nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. You pick a tool, nothing is ever going to be perfect. Claude Code is going to invent features. It's going to hallucinate features. It's going to do things you don't necessarily want it to do. It's going to say, I'll give you an example. I'm working with my local claw, right? That I'm building something, and then I get these heartbeat monitors every 2 hours, right? And I get these heartbeat calls every 2 hours, and Claude Code decided that I'm not going to get them anymore. And I was like, but why? Why did you do? Nobody asked for that. Put it back, please, right? And you have some more extreme cases of Claude Code deleting databases. And what does that mean for you as the end user? It means you have to, intelligent, right? You have to understand versioning. You have to understand Git. You have to understand GitHub. You understand redundancies, understand creating backups before you're giving, right? And you have to do this with consistency because, again, you are trusting Claude Code or whatever AI it is you're using or whatever orchestration system you're using with your code that you are using, right? Which means, think a little bit, right? What happens if you're going to what happens if this gets lost? What happens if it makes a change and breaks your entire system? Can you roll this back? Right? And a lot of people today are getting into this software development, and they're not thinking about that. They're putting in the prompt, and they're going, holy shit, look, I have a website from a prompt. But they're not thinking about versioning, they're not thinking about redundancy, they're not thinking about backups. But again, this is a situation where reps, right? You have to get into a situation where you need a backup in order to remember to always have a backup, right? Unless you're learning from experience and or somebody above you is telling you to do these things. But even then, right? You really don't understand the importance of a thing until you've been you're at the end of not having it, right? But on the most part, my experience with Claude Code, its planning has been top notch, right? Especially going into planning mode. And it's had that for a good long while before some of the other ones have had it. Its reasoning is top notch. No one's gonna say Opus 4.6 is a slouch, right? Then right? And the orchestration.
I concede.
Yeah. Its orchestration is top. I mean, what do you? The problem with using some of these items are that you have to, you're going to sit there and you're going to start planning something, and you're going to go, how much time should I spend planning this? And you're going to think maybe 45 minutes to an hour planning this is sufficient. Double it or triple that amount of time. And we've had this conversation multiple times. The more time you spend on planning, the better the execution is going to be. How about what? Tell me some of your experience with windsurf.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is like you're hitting the nail on the head, and which is why I gravitate towards windsurf because if we're talking about building like traditional software, there's just certain tools and that some of the other platforms like a Lovable or a Bolt they don't give you. Now they're great for certain things, yeah, for sure, but we're talking about production ready software that a bunch of people are going to use. There's certain things you just got to plan through, and that's really what I enjoy with windsurf. It's a fork of VS Code, so all these guys are really just kind of they took an open source repo and then they slapped their tag on it, and then now they're kind of making it their own thing. But I enjoyed the planning part. I think I'm not a traditional software engineer. I'm an AI native builder. I've learned Python and a couple other languages, and I leverage that knowledge to build software. But this was all in a very condensed time, so like the real learning has come from the reps, building an app end to end and then trying to push it to production, and then all the things that go wrong, and then kind of learning every single time. So through those reps, I learned that the easiest way to do it is to plan more. But I think it goes to our original point. It's like now I feel like more of an architect. I have an idea of like what I want to build, but I have to have an idea of what I want to build. I can't let I still can't just give that completely to AI. Mainly because throughout the build, when I need to make different decisions, they're all in line with the end goal. Because the end goal is the product. So why am I building this thing? So a lot of the planning is answering those questions and then going down several layers deeper to get to a PRD, to get to something where I can say, okay, this is a plan that covers everything I want, a product requirement document. And this is how I don't build without one, So a lot of my planning is figuring it out. Hey, what services do I need? What makes sense? Okay, I could go and get this expensive server, but if I'm only going to have 5 people using it every month, I could go get something for free from Superbase or one of these other databases, depending on my database needs. And these things are worked out through the planning so that I don't have to burn credits while I'm building, and trust that all the left and right turns I'm making throughout the build process are going to give me production ready code. So honestly, I planned for like 2 weeks one time before I built the project. But when I built it, this was one of my quickest builds end to end. I built that product that would have probably normally taken me 3 weeks to build in like 7 days from just really, really good planning. And it was smooth. It wasn't like a lot of bugs and everything like that. It was more so, does this integration still make sense? At the time from planning to now I'm actually using it, and I'm like, no. So then, in deciding what I'm going to do, that changes, but that's really what I use windsurf for. And then I could kind of see everything going on, so I'm not just auto accepting yet. Maybe I will one day when I trust the AI, the models enough, but I don't quite yet because I feel like I still need to be there to kind of guide it along the path. And I believe windsurf gives me the infrastructure to do so. Choosing different models for different tasks. I could bounce between models and I can choose them. I still use 4.5 for a lot of the code review. I wasn't a big Anthropic Claude guy, but man, Opus 4.6 is great, man. Opus 4.6 thinking, and then when the code base gets larger, I throw in that million context window, and I'm cooking with Crisco, man. Windsurf gives me the ability to jump in and out of that while still also using some traditional software engineering practices where I'll pull in extensions like a prettier to just kind of make sure that all the syntax is being done properly, where I don't even have to worry about it. It's being auto-corrected. And once I kind of have my setup and my workflow, I'm really just in a groove. And then now I'm kind of in a vibe, but I wouldn't consider it vibe coding, man. If anything, I would consider it context engineering, system planning. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that it's look, you're graduating. A lot of people are going to be graduating from coder to system designer because that's the natural gravitation, right? You're moving away from syntax. You're moving into how all of this works together, right? A junior developer at one point used to be told, "Write me this function." A junior developer is now being told, write me this program. Right? That's
Yeah.
because of the way that these agentic coding agents are speeding up velocity, right? As seen years going, these are your constraints. Build me this piece of software, and you're being able to run. But then we're going to be moving to you get this thing. You get this thing done, right? You've built this piece of software, and now you're in a situation where people are talking about scale. That won't scale. This isn't production ready. And we hear that all the time. We see it on LinkedIn. We see it on X. We see it on Substack. And what does that actually mean, right? What does that
strong
mean?
thoughts about this one.
I do have strong thoughts about this one, but right now we're going to key in specifically on the code, right? We're going to key specifically on the code here. Ask your coding agent to run a complexity analysis. It'll tell you what doesn't scale. It'll literally verbatim tell you what doesn't scale. Basically, what a complexity analysis does, it explains how many steps your code is taking to run until it gets to completion, right? Now, if you're in a situation where you have 100 users and your code is 5 steps, your code is now 500 steps for those 100 users. I'm trying to make big O notation kind of simple for people, but that's what you're thinking of when you're running a complexity analysis. Now, why is that important to run a complexity analysis, right? All right, well, you do understand that when you're using Facebook or some other social network, right? You understand that not everybody is hitting the same Facebook instance or LinkedIn instance, right? They're spun up into different little nodes, right? And that's how they scale the balance the load between these servers, right? Because it's multiple servers, multiple nodes that are running these instances, right? Okay, so if your code takes more steps than it needs to, right, to get to completion, then the problem that you're going to end up having is that you're going to have to spin up more nodes and more workers, and that means a bigger AWS cost for you, right? But that's but then the other half of it is dealing with DevOps and et cetera also. But literally, just ask your agent. It'll tell you. It'll tell you. But also, the other bigger problem is that you don't scale ideas. You scale things that prove that they work. So before you're shooting people down for building this thing, and your biggest argument is this isn't scaling, what if they have market fit? What if they have product market fit? What if they have users? Right?
I mean, most people don't realize that when you're mentioning some of these companies, you're talking about the top 5% of web traffic in all the world. The average website doesn't get 60, 70, 100,000 users, like most of these products that are built and used internally. They're used internally across multiple teams, but you're talking about the top apps. The average app that's solving the solution for a small business, maybe a couple hundred users a month, a couple thousand if you're doing it well. How many concurrent users? These are not actual issues that the average person is going to come across, or is it?
It depends, right? I mean, I'll let that linger for a second. I mean, look, what are the leaders of Lovable saying? What are the heads of NVIDIA saying? They're saying that the next billion-dollar industry is going to come from a vibe-coded application. Can it? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's going to be a much smaller percentage of these people that are going to be very, very highly successful using these applications. And of course they want you to believe that it's like a lottery ticket, right? You're going to scratch a lottery ticket. And they want you to use their platform. They want you to use their platform, so of course they're going to be sitting there shilling it out for you. Yes, the next billion-dollar company is going to come from somebody using Lovable, using Replit, vibe coding. Use all the inference that you can, right? No shit, NVIDIA is going to be selling you inference. They want you to use half of your salary and everything. They sell the inference, that's right. But on the flip side, it is amazing what you can do now, right? When you remove the noise, you remove all that from that equation, and you're able to sit down in front of a computer for a couple of hours, and you have a pretty website. I mean, a lot of people are jumping into Supabase, but you have to focus on something. RLS. Focus on RLS. Row level security. I'm not going to go into any more depth. Use your agent. Figure it out, right? Look,
Well, and this is, kind of really circles back to, the tools that you're using. If you want to build, if you're building software, you got to use the right tools. And I think, the tools that we're talking about, these are also tools that are still used in the software industry. NVIDIA, he said multiple times that most of his, Jensen said most of his team uses Cursor. They use, these, you got to have the tools, because the tools can help you work through all these things. It could help you determine whether Supabase is the right database. Do you have row level security? Are you doing, you can workshop these things to bring out a really solid product, but the speed is where the magic happens, because the end goal is product market fit. Does this product solve a problem? And if you can't get the product to actually work to even determine that, then you can never really kind of figure it out. But if you can go and spin up something really quick, quality, you cover all these bases, and it could have taken you, 6 months manually, and it's taking you a month with AI. That means you have 5 more months to figure out how to turn that into some cash, man. Or at least, even if you're not selling it, the software is supposed to solve a problem. Traditional coding languages are instructions for the computer. A prompt, a system prompt, is essentially the same thing. It's instructions. You're giving it instructions to do something with the end goal that it should solve a problem. And that problem doesn't have to be always technical. It could be an entertainment problem if you're building video games. It could be any problem, but it should solve a problem. And the quicker we could get to that place where we're solving these problems, there's either going to be less problems out there, or there's going to be more new problems. And this is where this kind of iterative loop comes in. And if you're not incorporating this into your flow, I think it's going to be incredibly hard to keep up, unless you just love to do it. Unless, some people love to code manually. It's almost like an art. They love the feeling of doing it. Outside of that, if you're trying to get something out there to solve a problem, to help your community, to help people, this family app, to, our family can never coordinate on something, and we want to build an app that helps everybody coordinate. Well, you could spend 6 months, or you could spend a month.
Nobody's out there building a house with only a hammer anymore. They're using a nail gun for a reason, right? It's a good analogy. It's a good analogy. Once the tool's out the box, why would you go? I mean, why are you going back? You're not asking Picasso to paint your walls in your house, right? It's just, I don't know,
There's
man.
A place for it.
There's a place
for it.
Look, there's a place for it. There's absolutely a place for it. But you have to have the understanding when you're going into it that you're going to be behind speed-wise. Because think about where we are, right? You're thinking 2021. What are we, 5 years removed from ChatGPT's release, roughly?
Almost.
Commercial release?
Late 2022, yeah.
Yeah, right? So we're almost 5 years removed from, and look at where we are. Code, syntax is almost completely commoditized. What happens in another few years? What happens when Opus 4.6 become Opus 5.6? What does that look like?
Oh my goodness.
No, but these are the things, right? These are the things that I think about, because you're not planning for the world tomorrow. You're planning for the world a year down the line. What does that look like? People need to have an understanding of how to use these tools to navigate this environment. And look, the fact of the matter is these teams are slimming down, and you see that in big tech. They're letting go of your junior developers. The definition of a junior just got harder. The bar is raised now, right? The bar is raised. They're still doing leak code to get you in the door, which, we can have our own discussion about at some point. What does a new junior now require? Ability to guide AI is a huge thing. Validate outputs, understand architecture basics, think in workflows and not files, right? You have to have Like I said before, the old juniors, can you write this function? The new juniors, can you take this problem and get it to a working system? That's what it looks like now. That is what it is. That is the job now, is being able to take these agentic AI systems and turning it into something that solves a major problem for a company, for a business, creating a business out of it. That's what it is.
And the end user wins. The end user wins because if you have a roadmap of a bunch of features you want to integrate, especially these are features that are voted by your users saying, hey, we would love it. We love your platform. We would love it if you did this. When a user that's using your product gives you that kind of feedback, that means they took the time out their day, opened up this tab, went and wrote this and said, hey, man, we love your product, but if it could just do this, we would love it more. Typically, they'll have to wait 6 months, 8 months, if it ever even gets integrated. And they put in all that energy to say, basically, we would love to give you more of our money. And we will give you a little bit more if you could do this. Now, if you didn't have to wait 8 months and you could just give it to them immediately, isn't that a better user experience? Like these are all the other things that jump into my mind when I think about leveraging these tools with the speed. Is like the speed doesn't just help. The speed, or it's not just keeping up with the times. There's a lot of benefits outside of just getting a product to market. It's fixing a bug faster. This bug that would have normally probably taken 2 hours could be done in 15 minutes because that agent has all the context instantaneously and is already coming up with solutions. And you just got to condense that pipeline to put that bug fix to production. And if done properly, some of the users may not have even known that it was a bug in the program. So is speed bad then? I don't think so. I think speed is just the new pace of normal.
Unfortunately, it is. And unfortunately for a lot of people who like to work a lot slower. And like we always, the ones that we're going to criticize the most are the ones that are working and trying to wade through the molasses to make a decision on what it is they're going to be doing. Because especially as this pertains to software as a service, if you can't keep up, you will get left behind. That is a fact. You're not just using these tools. If you're not using these tools, you're not just slower. You're literally operating in a different era. This isn't about replacing developers. It's replacing how development happens, right?
It's a bar right there. You gotta say it again for the people in the back.
Yeah, right. This isn't about replacing developers. It's about replacing how development happens. Across the board, things change, right? Nobody's, I get it's a badge of honor to use assembly, but people are using Python. People are using C#, right? It's just one of those things, right? And the new coding language seems to be heavily pushing towards natural language.
Yeah. And I remember I hear buzz in the street that it may even go from natural language to straight ones and zeros. And you bypass all the middle stuff. And now we're in a world where you don't even see the code. You just see the output. Yeah. What happens then? This is a leaning in to what seems to be the natural course that we're all taking. But in that case, I believe software will be better overall. I think some things that we are used to dealing with will be a thing of the past. Software breaking will be weird. Just like, kids saying, hey, what did you do without cell phones? What did you do without social media? What did you do without some of these things that just seems to make so much sense? And I think it's going to come a point in time where it's like, wow, I can't believe this software broke. That's weird. It's been years since I've seen this software not work. This is weird. Is something wrong with my phone? Is the power out? Is it, there'll be a generation that'll be surprised that something just doesn't automatically work.
I mean, I feel like that generation is already alive and well today because they just have no understanding of how a lot of these things are done, especially when you grew up in the era that we did. We had to wade through bugs. We had to wade through performance issues and wait for patches and hot fixes in order to fix those things. And I feel like a lot of people today just have the expectation that. But again, that's a different conversation for a different day. Look, we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna challenge you as an audience. Go to, even though that we said Lovable and Replit and all these things aren't great for production, go use them. They have a free tier. Look how fast it is that you can spin up a website. That's a challenge for you guys in the audience. You don't have to create an account. It's not going to cost you any money. Go prompt. Build something small. Think about it. Something that you can use for yourself. Or a website that highlights you or your business or whatever it is. Go use it. So look how easy it is. And look what the end product is. It's gorgeous. You'll never have spent a day coding in your life. Just don't try to share a local host, right? Because that's a funny meme that people are showing on it.
It's completely safe because this shouldn't be getting thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in that environment. That is a perfect starting point to just getting familiar with what's going on. And you don't gotta try to master this thing in a day, but just get familiar with it. What's going on here? Ask questions. Be curious. I oftentimes build initially when I started, and even now, I have another chat bot open up. I'm just asking it questions. Hey, I'm getting some clarity from my windsurf, and then I'm asking some other questions on the side, just to make sure, because sometimes windsurf be acting up. So I gotta make sure that I'm keeping it in check. But that's a great starting point, and it's a good habit to build. Of just doing that, and with time, all these things that don't seem to make sense will make sense because we all started there.
And once again, thank you so much for joining us. Episode 4. I can't believe we made it through 4 episodes. You guys have a great week. We'll come back to you next week. See you guys later.
Take care, guys.